Continuation of the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. At that time, Jesus said to his disciples, "Behold, I send you as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and simple as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up in the councils, and they will scourge you in their synagogues. And you shall be brought before governors and before kings for my sake, for a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. But when they shall deliver you up, take no thought how or what you are to speak, for it shall be given you in that hour what to speak. For it is not you that speak, but the Spirit of your Father that speaketh in you. The brother also shall deliver up the brother to death, and the father the son, and the children shall rise up against the parents, and shall put them to death. And you shall be hated by all men for my name's sake, but he that shall persevere to the end, he shall be saved." You can sit down just for a couple of minutes and say a few words about today's feast. It was the commemoration of St. Paul, and sort of a continuation of the feast of yesterday, which was the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. But since the feast yesterday talked almost exclusively of St. Peter, the church has added another feast day the next day to talk a bit about St. Paul. And both St. Peter and St. Paul and all the apostles are obviously model for us. I would say they're a model for us, for Christians living, or Catholics living in our time, more than at any other time, because if you compare the times we're living in and the times the apostles lived in, there's a lot of similarity. You think of how small in number they were and what they were up against. You think of St. Peter when he arrived in Rome, pagan Rome, where all the institutions were established against the one true God. Even in a lot of cases, the natural law was not observed. The apostles didn't have necessarily an education, at least an education that would be respected and admired according to the world. And yet they stood up, as it says in the gospel today, before kings, before princes, to give a testimony to the truth. And that's what we're called to do today. I don't need to tell you that the situation in the world and in the church and in tradition, and sometimes even in our families, is less than encouraging today. We may also be facing martyrdom, as St. Paul and St. Peter did, because of this testimony that they gave to the truth. But that doesn't mean we need to worry, as our Lord says also in the Gospel today. Don't worry. It's not you who will be speaking; it's the Spirit of your Father that will speak in you. So what we need to do is to develop the life of the Spirit in us, the life of grace, sanctify ourselves, study. And that doesn't, of course, we need to also study doctrine. The Holy Ghost will speak within us, but He also wants us to prepare ourselves as well. But the main thing to prepare to develop in us is the life of grace, so that we can be docile to the inspirations of the Holy Ghost. For when the time comes, we'll know what to say, and we won't be afraid to be, as it says, hated by all men. And that's where we're going, to be hated by all men. And you see the hatred against God and against everything that reminds the world of God, that is behind all these laws and all these institutions that are once again today against God, against the natural law. This hatred will one day, or may one day, be directed against us. But once again, we shouldn't get discouraged. If you look at St. Paul, how there's one person who had the right maybe to get discouraged, it would have been St. Paul. He says himself, 3 times he was shipwrecked. 3 times he was beaten with rods up almost to death. One time he was even stoned to, quote unquote, to death. They thought he was dead and they left him, but he was still alive. He saw his own nation reject the Messiah that they'd been waiting for. He said he had to suffer from false brothers, as it says again here in the Gospel. Brother shall deliver up brother to death. The Father, the Son. St. Paul had to suffer all that. Betrayals of his most closest collaborators sometimes. And yet, if you read St. Paul, there's one thing that transpires in all his writings is hope, and his zeal just only doubled. The more he gets persecuted, the more he wants to work hard, and he worked up until his death for the salvation of souls. And, since we're living in times similar to the times of the apostles, the same means for accomplishing the mission of the apostles are necessary today. And that's why, I'm going to finish with that, I think the Dominican order is something extremely necessary for today. St. Dominic, when he founded the Dominican order, his goal, his idea, was to reintroduce or bring back the apostolic life, the life that the apostles led in the beginning of the church. Their zeal for the salvation of souls, backed up by a life of prayer. So this sort of mixed life, a life of prayer in the monastery, and yet the mission to preach the truth to a hostile world. So I ask you to pray for the Dominican order, for the whole order, the first order, the second order, which is the religious, the nuns, and the contemplative nuns, and the third order as well, all the third order members around the world who are real members of the order. And if you could pray for more vocations to the first order, if there's any young men thinking about if there's any young men who are worried about the world and who want to make a difference and want to save souls, as I said, the Dominican order will give you the means to accomplish that mission, to preach the truth and save souls, just as the apostles did in a world very similar to ours. For a few minutes to your prayers today. Pray for the Dominican order and for vocations especially, for our community. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.